Om Namasri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. Today we'll be discussing The Master as I Saw Him, a biography of Swami Vivekananda by his Irish disciple who was from England, who lived in Wimbledon and later on uh, dedicated her whole life for her master's cause. So very aptly she has named this biography The Master as I Saw Him. When she was requested by Swami Sarvasthananda to write a biography of her guru, she said, I do not have the capacity to properly describe or write a biography, but I would rather record my reminiscences. And those reminiscences of hers have been published in a book form, which is known as The Master as I Saw Him, as Sister Nivedita saw him. So we have covered almost 2 chapters, the first 2 chapters. We are in the second chapter now. The first chapter dealt with her meeting with Swamiji in a parlor meeting. It was a parlor meeting in St. George's Drive in Pimlico in London. That was her first meeting with her guru. And subsequently, she attended all the talks, but he did not stay long during his first visit. It was during his second visit to England. Swami Vivekananda visited United Kingdom or England three times. And he also went to Glasgow, from where he went to America. So he went to Scotland as well. But we do not know much about his Scotland visit, but most of the reminiscences which are recorded here were either the reminiscences she recorded during her first 2 meetings, which was in England, and also the third meeting. Third meeting was a very brief visit when she came with Swami Vivekananda to England, and then he did not, it was on his way to America, that is his last visit to America, after which he did not go outside India. He passed away he attained Mahasamadhi in 1902. So the last meeting also is covered, last visit of Swami Vivekananda, and the reminiscences that are covered here. Not only do they cover the reminiscences that she recorded while he was in England, but also her visit with her master, a sea voyage, of course, that is also covered. The sea voyage when she came with Swami Vivekananda, those memoirs are also recorded, plus her wanderings with Swami Vivekananda in India. They traverse practically the whole country from south to the north, from east of India, that is Kolkata, to Jammu and Kashmir, Srinagar, Amarnath, all the places of pilgrimage, historical places of historical importance. So her training, after she decided to leave England and dedicate her whole life by going to India, which she did in 1898, January, in the month of January, 1898, after Swami Vivekananda's second visit to England. So after that, she was impressed. She will mention about that fact in the second chapter. So we discussed what she had understood, the various talks that he gave during a second visit to London, especially the Prince's Hall and the Oakland Street, 2 places where he delivered most of his talks, apart from the parlor meetings in 64 St. George's Drive. But he also delivered a few talks which are now published under the title Jnana Yoga. Most of his Jnana Yoga lectures were delivered in London. So now she is discussing this particular some ideas of Jnana Yoga which she liked at that time. And we have discussed in our previous class the concept of Maya. That was one of the most important contributions he made. Very often, Maya is understood in a very, very restricted way. People think it is some kind of illusion. Maya is normally translated as illusion. So, the thing is, people could not appreciate the real meaning of Maya, because it is, according to her, Swamiji said this word is not translatable into English. Maya is not just illusion. If you look up the dictionary meaning, perhaps you'll get the translation as illusion. But illusion is something uh, which is like magic, which is an illusion created either by a magician, which does not exist. Whereas Maya is something different. It is a statement of facts. The statement of facts that we see around us, the nature as it is projected from Brahman, this nature is projected, and this nature shows us different scenes, takes us through different stages, different places, and each one of those encounters which we have with elements of nature are of a transient nature. So this the transient nature of the world itself is what is Maya. So we do not know, according to Swamiji, he said the word is like a Tantalus's hell. So we do not know anything about this universe, but at the same time we cannot say that we do not know, because we perceive it. But the way we see the world is just an incomplete uh, understanding of the real truth behind this world. We see only the apparent truth. We see the apparent man. We do not see the real man. And that is the reason. And that function, that illusion is a creation of Maya. So it is through the power of Maya that the world looks as it looks to most of us now. So it's a statement of fact. Most of us are encountering the world in our own way, and our own limited way, through the prism of our, or the through the lens of our mind, through the lens of our, for each one the world is different. For a drunk person, the world may be imaginary world. For somebody who has taken drugs, he may see a different world, because he is in a different frame of mind. A blind person sees a different world because he cannot see things. He can hear things, he can smell things. So depending on the capacity of your sense organs and the capacity of your mind, you encounter the world in various ways. And the fact that there's something in the experience which is real, but we cannot fathom what it is. We fathom something which appears to be real, and the moment we try to find out what it is, we try to hold it, try to grasp it, it vanishes. So that's why it is known as Maya or illusion. So he says, really speaking, we do not know. Even the most advanced scientist who goes deep into wants to go deep into the truth of matter, energy, the subatomic world, the quantum world, he tries very hard to understand the secret of the universe, because that was the quest for truth which scientists did. It was a very appreciable, it's a really great effort on the part of the scientists to find out the truth behind the physical universe. That itself is part of Prakriti. The truth behind the physical universe, the truth behind the mental universe, the truth behind the energy universe, the energy forces that move the world, the objects that form part of this creation, the deeper secrets below the seas, far above in the cosmos, all those things have been discovered to the extent it can be with the help of human mind. And that is an appreciable effort. We should appreciate that the search after truth has led mankind to discover newer and newer things. Every time something new is discovered. So that quest goes on. But the principles of Vedanta, which which have established that there is some supreme consciousness which we may not be able to grasp right now, because we can see only through the colored lens. As long as our lens is colored, a yellow colored glass will make everything look yellow. A red colored glass will make everything look red. So Maya is your view, something X. Swamiji described it very nicely. Say the reality is something X. That plus the mind is what you see. The mind sees the same truth, the same consciousness appears to many people as different objects. So that is the one of the fundamental ideas Sister Nivedita says. He defined the word Maya, saying that it is a statement of fact, the discrepancies that we see in the world outside, the transient nature. So to walk in the, it's something like walking in the midst of a dream, or half sleeping, half waking. We do not know, passing all our lives in a haze, something similar to that. We in a dream, we live in a dream world. In a deep sleep state, the whole universe for some time does not exist. So we are passing. The fate of every one of us who is bound to this sense world is, the nature conjures up many pictures, many illusions, which is turned by a single term known as Maya. So this is the fate of all sense knowledge. Anything that we gather through the senses, that and this is the universe. So this, trying to find out the secret, the essence or the truth behind the universe, is one of his main contributions, according to Nivedita, in all the talks on Jnana Yoga he delivered in London, in United Kingdom. See, like many of his interpretations, the Indian word of Maya is incapable of, as I told you, exact rendering in English. So the only way of arriving, according to Swamiji, arriving at an understanding of Maya is to catch the conception which the speaker, or in this case Swami Vivekananda, is trying to express. Try to understand, try to think through his eyes. He takes us through a journey by his, though words are not sufficient enough to convey, even when he spoke to one of his disciples, Sharat Chandra Chakravarti, in Bengali. Bengali word is much more flexible, and you can understand certain, if you, especially if you know Sanskrit, it can be used to express spiritual truths to a much higher degree. But even then, his disciple was not capable. Then when he really had that experience of what Brahman is, what Maya is, then he says, now I have understood. Some, you may see, intuitive understanding of that concept. So if we try to understand, that is why Swamiji says, when you read the Upanishads or the Gita or any other scripture, you don't try to read it in the light of the commentary of the commentators. The commentary which the commentators have, it is their view. So Swamiji says the Upanishads should be read as if you are reading some poetry. You allow the ideas to soak in your consciousness. When the ideas are soaked, completely soaked, when we constantly read these ideas, the ideas of Vedanta or Vedas and the great scriptures, and allow them to sink into our consciousness, then we will get a intuitive understanding of those sentences, not before that. So she says the best way to understand is have some faith in a person who is striving to express the inexpressible through words, rather than to fasten the attention to one sentence here and there. If we take up one or two sentences from his entire Jnana Yoga, then it would be a mistake. That is why these compilations, especially the words of Swami Vivekananda, the great compilations that have been made, they have its own value. It will introduce you to the subject. But there is a great danger. If you just read a compilation of Swamiji's quotes, they may be very inspiring, but if they are read out of context, then you may not get the exact meaning. So she found that when she was listening to Swami Vivekananda, instead of holding on to one or two sentences he said and then ponder over it and try to get a incomplete meaning. Try to catch the concept, try to feel, try to intuitively understand what is Swamiji trying to convey. Have some faith in the master. That is her idea. So what she understood, she is trying to express by Maya is thus meant that shimmering, elusive, half real, half unreal complexity of the world around us. It is not an illusion. It is something which we experience. Otherwise, this world will not. People will not be so much attached to this world. If they really knew that it is transitory, it is elusive, if everything is Maya, then they would not fall for it, because it is real to us. For example, he gave the beautiful example. I'm repeating this because this was the example he himself encountered when he was traveling in Gujarat. There was this small desert of Kutch, where for miles and miles together you will find only sand and sand. In the hot summer, when you pass through that desert, when you look towards the vast expanse of the desert, you get a feeling you see some shimmering water, as if a few 100 meters away you can you see an illusion of a lake. You really wonder, because that happens because of the heat of the surface of the sand. It reflects the light in such a way that it appears as if there is water. The sky is reflected in that, and because of that you get a feeling that there is water, and people tend to run after it thinking there is water. The more they go towards it, it recedes. So are you not seeing the water there? The mirage is seen. It is known as a mirage. So the mirage is seen by the people who walk in the desert, but till they are experts, or till they know that it is a mirage, we should not run after it. After that, after having that knowledge, Swamiji says, I never chased it. In the beginning, when I was thirsty, I thought, let me just see if there is a nice pool of water. And he said, the more I went nearer, it was his first experience, because such scenes you don't see in Bengal. So he said, then I suddenly understood. I had read somewhere that there is a phenomena in the desert known as mirage. So this is it. So that's why this shimmering, elusive, half real, half unreal complexity, it is half real because you see it. It is half unreal because the moment you go, it vanishes. So was it not there? Yes, it was very much there. You saw it, but why is it not there? So this half real and half unreal complexity of the world, which she understood from her uh, understanding of the entire essence of Maya, the lectures of Maya he delivered, that there is no rest, no satisfaction in this world, no ultimate certainty. See, that is, it doesn't require a genius. It's not a rocket science to understand that there is so much uncertainty in the world. That the world is uncertain, even a child knows. Everything is uncertain. No person can say that these are the things will happen in sequence in my life. Nobody can say what will happen in our life the very next moment. So no ultimate certainty, that is one thing. No satisfaction, no rest, and half unreal, half real complexity. We become aware of this universe through the senses, and through the mind, as the mind is dependent on the senses. The senses, sense organs, the Gyanendriyas and the Karmendriyas, Gyanendriyas especially, the senses of perception, convey the information to the mind. So the agency of the mind is very important. So depending on our reactive capacity, the mind reacts differently in different people. Where some people see nothing, other people will see a ghost, or they will see a snake. Some people might see a rope. Some people might see a rope, but some people who have a lot of fear, their mind is obsessed with the idea of snake. Even if they see some rope in the dark, they will think it is a snake. So it's not just the sense organs. The sense organs, the eyes may be same. Both people, both the subjects are passing through a dark area, and both of them are seeing the same rope. But in the dark, one person imagines that rope to be a snake, and that is because of the inherent fear he has. The other person He's right from beginning. There's no illusion in his mind. He's seeing it as rope itself. So that is one aspect of the reality as we see. So Swamiji says that no ultimate certainty. There are certain qualities of Maya. We can describe Maya indirectly, not directly, by saying that it is shimmering in the sense it is half real, half unreal. It is elusive. The moment you try to grasp it, it vanishes. It is temporary. It is transient. It is there is no rest. There is no satisfaction. If you see a person contentment, that's why Holy Mother said contentment is such a great virtue. Somehow that contentment, man fails to be contented with be content with anything that he achieves. If he is after money, he is not content. This a stage comes that he wants more and more and more. So there is no rest. It is as if you are having a mad chase, a rat chase, as they say, a mad rat chase for these things, which though you know they are elusive, it gives you no satisfaction. So it doesn't allow you, the influence of Maya does not allow you to take rest. It makes you run after these illusory things. It gives you no satisfaction, no ultimate certainty. You can't say with any amount of certainty what is going to happen, whether the results of the actions that you have done will produce the necessary fruits or not. We do not know. And these are the things which are applicable to things that we are aware through our senses and through our mind, which are dependent on the senses. But he says the same Upanishad also tells that by which all this is pervaded. Know that to be the Lord himself. Tat Tvamasi. Vedanta says, this is the Lord. So it's a bit confusing. If that is the Lord, why don't I see it as the Lord himself? The all-pervading Lord, why is he not intuitively understood by me? I try to understand, I try to think that the scriptures say that by which all this that you see around, though it is unreal, though it is ultimately uncertain, though we do not we cannot take these things to be for granted because they are elusive, they are half real, half unreal. This complexity, behind this complexity, why don't I see that God? Because the scripture says he is pervading. He is an antaryami. He is all pervading reality behind this whole universe. So these two concepts, according to Nivedita, placed side by side, she says we have the whole theology of Hinduism as presented by Vivekananda. One is the idea of Maya, the transient Nitya and Anitya. A strange mixture of Nitya and Anitya is what reality is. If we want the Nitya, we have to give up the Anitya and reach the Nitya. But till then, we will have to live in a world which is a mixture of Nitya and Anitya, and that is Maya. So, so beautifully she says, we understood this very, very complex thing for which we had to read commentaries, we had to read so many books. We were not able to visualize, even in leave alone intuitive understanding, even a simple intellectual understanding was impossible. But Swamiji made these things very clear. So she says, such growth must presuppose, he says, the growth of a spiritual being or an individual, if we really means that we have to not only understand these two concepts, the whole theology, the two conceptions, one of Maya, and that all the Maya or the nature that you see around you is pervaded by that reality. So not that the reality doesn't exist, it exists, but not in the form that we see. It exists as pure consciousness, pure Sat, pure Ananda. So how to realize that? So she says, Swamiji presented the whole theology of Hinduism in these two basic concepts. Whether you take his talks on practical Vedanta, God in everything, then he gave many talks of Maya and illusion, and on Maya, the real and apparent man. What is the real man? What is the apparent man that we see? So all these things, all these lectures, according to Sister Nivedita, can be reduced to two conceptions, and if you place them side by side, they constitute the whole theology of Hinduism. So all other teachings and ideals which Swamiji spoke of, she says, she makes a beautiful summary of what he taught. They can be subordinated to these two, whether he taught Raj Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, all other ideas which he gave are commentaries or maybe subordinate to these two basic ideas of his. So for him, religion was, or spirituality was, a matter of growth of the individual, a question of always being and becoming. So we should try to be, not try to understand. It is to be and to become the reality. To be one with the reality is the goal of life, and that is spirituality. Understanding philosophy, understanding Advaita, understanding reality is one thing. Through the mind, through the prism of the mind, it is always bound to remain incomplete. It will give you you can maybe use that to really travel towards reality. It is like seeing a distant object, a distant place through a binocular. The Shastras will allow you to do that. But till you reach that place, till you have the first-hand information, realization of reaching that place, they will always remain concepts in your mind. Ideas that are frozen in the brain. They are frozen, they are ideas, no doubt. You may repeat it thousands of times. So the philosophy of Advaita, especially the philosophy of truth as preached by the Advaita, where the person is supposed to simply ignore the reality of the temporary, or consider that this unreal should be rejected right from the outset through the process of neti, not this. You take up everything in life, not this, not this. So it's a process of intense renunciation. So that intense renunciation leaves you with the truth behind the temporary. All these things, if is covered by the Lord, Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam Yat Kincha Jagatyam Jagat, whatever that moves or does not move in this earth, cover it with the Lord. Isha Vasyam means the world is to be covered. The word is to be covered, or the truth behind this world has to be understood. That which, by which all this is pervaded. Know that Tat Tvam Asi, that is the Lord himself. Now this is a verbal assertion of the fact. But are we really able to cognize or have a realization of the truth behind? That is the whole idea of sadhana. So to become that, to be that, is the goal of life. So that is why Swamiji says, unless you be, you can't make. It is like a blind leading the blind and both falling into the ditch. That is why more effort should be made to be and become, and try to grasp and live those ideals rather than understand those ideals. But the growth, that spiritual growth which a human being or a spiritual aspirant wants to reach, it must start with some presupposition. And those two presuppositions are two fundamental facts are the idea of the transient nature, anitya, to understand what anitya is, what nitya is, and try to see the nitya amongst this anitya. So that is the two fundamental facts, she says. That is why Thakur used to say, he says, what is upay ki? Master Mashe, when he asked, first he said, Nirjanvas, first go to a quiet place. Then he said, Sadhu Sangha. Then he said, take the name of the Lord. These are preparations. Then he also added, Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka. Without that, no spirituality or religion is possible. So, after presupposing, understanding these two fundamental facts of nature and the gradual transference of the center of gravity, as it were, out of one into the other. Right now, we are immersed in the world. We have to slowly, we can't do it immediately. If you could do it immediately, then Brahman is, as the Jnana yogis say, Brahman will be in the palm of your hands. You will be realizing immediately. If you can totally give up the world. Since we cannot uh, give up the world that quickly, the center of gravity, which is right now in the temporary material world, has to be slowly, slowly shifted, the center of consciousness, from Maya into the self. The two realities, they exist side by side. There's a mixture of the self and the non-self, Atma and Anatma. There's a mixture of Nitya and Anitya, and that is known as Maya. The condition of absorption in Maya was bondage. In the Eastern sense, if your center of gravity is in Maya, then you are bound. Baddha Jiva. So Thakur used to tell about the fish. He gave the example. There are four types of fish. Ek ta Baddha Jiva. Baddha Jiva means they are in the net and they don't bother to come out of the net. Some people try to come out of the net. They are mumukshus. And some people are never caught by the net. They are nitya muktas. Thakur used to give the example. And some people with great effort, they manage to, they are not just mumukshus, they are mukta purushas. They have struggled and they have come out. So also, this shifting of center of gravity, according to Sister Nivedita, was Swamiji's central message. Why we have to study Maya? To get rid of Maya and shift our center of gravity from Maya into that which is not Maya. That is that which is the Maya Dhisha, ruler of Maya or the self. So that is why this Sanskrit is such a beautiful language. We call the Lord one who is controlling this Maya. We are under its control. So he is Maya Tita. He is either beyond Maya or Maya Dhisha. He is beyond, and that is why he can control. The Ishvara or the Brahman is the Mayadhisha. So we worship the Lord and we try to shift our center of gravity from the area, I mean, from the range of Maya into that which is beyond Maya, into the self. So this absorption in Maya is nothing but bondage. When we say we are Baddha Jiva, we are in Maya. We are within the realm of Maya and getting influenced by Maya, and Maya is acting upon us. Nature is acting upon us. Nature will say, give us trouble and say, now you cry, and we will cry. Swamiji tells, nature is always dictating. It says, now be happy. It gives us some toys, just as we give some chocolates to the children and they are very happy. The moment we say, now you should not play, now you have to do some homework, all the same child becomes unhappy. So nature is doling out, by giving us these nice things and we are happy. And it takes away some nice things which we are attached to and we become unhappy. So it is as it were, nature is controlling us. We are not able to control the external nature. The day we can do it, we become one with the Maya Desh. The center of gravity has to be shifted from Maya to this one who is in control of Prakriti or nature. So that is known as Mukti. To have broken that bondage of Maya, which is the Eastern word for bondage, the freedom or Mukti or Moksha or even Nirvana, that is the idea. The path for this would-be breaker of bondage must always be by seeking renunciation, not by seeking enjoyment. So the path which these scriptures tell us that we need to follow, it is only through renunciation only. The Swami said that he was echoing the spirit behind all religions. All religions, whether they are Vedantic religions or Semitic religions, they have one fundamental idea which inspires them, and all these religions have this fundamental idea of mukti or nirvana, though they may not say, some may say salvation, some may call it by different names. So the fundamental thing, if one has to become spiritual, is to halt that quest for pleasure. That pleasure which makes you more and more bound to this Maya has to be given up. So all have sought to turn life into a battlefield than a pleasurable room. All have striven to make man strong for death than rather than for life. That is all the religions. She says something which is very significant. See, that pleasure-seeking attitude has to be given up someday or the other. You may cajole a child, you may tell a child that this life is full of pleasure, just as Buddha's parents tried to do with him. Buddha's parents, they thought that by surrounding the young prince right from childhood, he was surrounded with pleasure, surrounded with good things. So everybody seeks to make this world a very, very pleasurable place where there will be only pleasure. That is what everybody dreams, and that is what every child is taught to dream. He is taught to dream that this world is something which is there for you to enjoy. You enjoy it. He is under that false impression that I can go on and on. Maybe he's born to some rich parents. So he will go on thinking that I am safe. So all the religions tell you the contrary. That is why the whole of Gita is the stage that is set for the for delivering the message of Gita is a battlefield rather than a place where everything is full of pleasure and joy. Why people may think that why is religion so negative in its approach? Why this negativity is emphasized in all religion? Why renunciation? Can there not be a happy religion? Can there not be a religion which teaches us pleasure? The same thing happened in the life of Buddha. His father thought that by surrounding him with pleasure, he will be shown only the positive side of life. But the truth behind this Maya is that these temporary things, no matter how nice and pleasurable they are, you cannot hold on to these temporary things permanently. That is how Maya creates an illusion. Maya creates an illusion which teaches you that you can hold on to the world which you think is giving you pleasure right now. It is this halt in the quest for pleasure. This is a beautiful sentence Nivedita uses. He says for all religions, Indian or otherwise, any other religion, they have preached that renunciation is the only way to reach the goal of life. And all of them have made man strong for death rather than for life. Here I remember a very important thing. The American Robert Ingersoll or somebody who met Swamiji was a very hedonistic type of person, and he believed in a hedonistic philosophy that as long as you have money and you have the capacity to enjoy pleasure, you just enjoy it as if you can squeeze an orange. You take the full juice, don't bother about what happens to the other people. You just squeeze the orange. That is, take whatever life offers you, even if it makes some other people unhappy. But you just be focused on your own pleasure. That is the attitude. Then Swamiji told him, and then he said, well, what is this Vedanta? It's always emphasizing death and all those things. He said, your life, your religion, Vedanta, I don't like because it doesn't teach you how to live. It focuses more on death. Then Swamiji says, it may not teach me how. It is ridiculous to assume that if you do not know how to die, then you do not know how to live, because these are two inseparable aspects of the both the aspects of life are connected to each other. Every day we are going one step towards death. The day we are born, every day passes. That is why Sri Ramakrishna used to say, one day has passed and I have not yet realized the truth. So he was in a hurry. Even Swamiji was in a hurry to give his life-giving message. The message of Bhagavad Gita, the immortal message of Bhagavad Gita, the truth about the spirit, was given on a battlefield when there was no certainty what would happen, what would be the result of the battle, whether they will die or whether they will live, who will die, who will win, who will lose, how many will die. So religion has always striven try to make a person strong to face death rather than enjoy life. That is one fundamental thing Sister Nivedita understood. So, but she says, contrary to other religions, which consider renunciation as some sort of negative thing. Oh, you have to renounce, you have to be voluntarily or observe poverty. If you see some of the Christian traditions, they glorified poverty because Christ never, he was totally dependent on even Buddhism. Even big kings renounced everything and went after alms and gave up all the pleasures. So it is a kind of negative activity for many other religions where giving up in a negative way is the way to renunciation or the goal of life. But she says Swamiji differed somewhat from these other teachers. That was her study of Swamiji's message. He accepted every kind of mastery as a form of renunciation. Now, to understand this concept, we have to, she has so beautifully analyzed this. She says for him, just giving up the pleasures of the world is not renunciation. To have any kind of mastery over the forces of nature, that itself is renunciation. Towards the end of his life, she says, I told him that renunciation was the only word I ever heard from his lips. He said, day and night you are talking only about renunciation. Of course, she knew that Christianity and all other great prophets have taught that. But still, she said, your message is full of this word, tyaga, renunciation. And I know it is the basis of all religions. But I have not really understood what is your concept of tyaga. So, towards the end of his life, I mean Swamiji's life, she told him, Nivedita told him that renunciation was the only word that I means she heard from his lips. And yet, in truth, I think that conquer was much more characteristic of him. The idea of renunciation was intimately connected with the idea of conquest. For he pointed out that it is by renunciation, by sustained and determined effort, by absorption in hard problems through lonely hours, by choosing toil and refusing ease, by absorption in hard, that Stephenson, for instance, invented the steam engine. Now, this is a very new concept. Stephenson, who's from Scotland, incidentally, he was the one who invented the steam engine. So, Swami used to give such examples and see the sacrifice involved. He is that not renunciation? Is not? Do you not see a sustained and determined effort by these great pioneers of whatever it may be, whatever may the purpose of their life may be? There was some kind of renunciation involved. So that renunciation, that conquest of man's lower nature, that conquest of Prakriti by being absorbed in very hard problems of life in their own way. They may not have the perfect solution, but what they felt was a problem, they tried to conquer it. How? Through lonely hours. While all others were running after pleasure and other things, they chose toil and gave up all the pleasures of life, gave up a life of luxury and ease. So also you find doctors and people, especially during the pandemic, these nurses, and for whom were they working? You may say they were working for money, but it's not just money that motivates people to work. By choosing toil and refusing ease, it is a sense of conquest that motivates people. So she says even Stephenson was motivated that when he wanted to somehow invent a steam engine, he pointed out, means Swamiji pointed out to her through many examples that the science of medicine also, the people who have developed some wonderful drugs which have saved mankind, they represented a strong concentration of man's mind upon healing, as would be required for a cure by prayer, by thought. So I said, just as people cured people by mere thought, the scientists also, through a different method, they sacrificed a lot of their time. They toiled hours and hours together alone when all others were losing their focus. They were enjoying the pleasures of life. They have denied themselves. So that was the kind of renunciation Swamiji felt was advocated by religion. All religions, according to him, it's not just a negative sort of renunciation, but something positive, some conquest. The word conquest was more natural to Swamiji than renunciation. So renunciation for him meant conquest. Conquest of what? Conquest of the lower nature of man, the lower nature of human beings. So he made us feel that all the study that we do, all the tapasya that we do, all the austerity, it is to attain or to gain some knowledge. If the purpose is clear, then the tapasya has some meaning. There are people who perform austerities for austerity's sake. That is not what is advocated by Swamiji. When he says renunciation, it is for a particular purpose, a higher purpose, which begins with the conquest of material nature, then it goes further higher up, which leads to the conquest of the mind, and then finally it leads to the conquest of one's own tendencies. Above all, she says, he preached that character. Character alone was the power that determined the permanence of a religious way. What is the character of that aspirant? Why is he doing austerity? If the tapasya, that is why Thakur Sri Ramakrishna said, in this Kali Yuga, truth is the tapasya. Holding on to truth, that means you have to conquer falsehood. Truth is nothing. Speaking the truth is to conquer the tendency to speak falsehood. So all the conquests, whether it is of the body is trying to become weak, you make it strong. The mind is trying to become weak and succumb to the pleasure-seeking attitude, which is very natural to the mind. You say, no, I will not do it. So it is a conquest. So some kind of conquest, and that leads to development of a character. So according to Nivedita, it is character alone that he preached. And the power of the religious wave, whether it is Vedanta, Christianity, Islam, or any other religion, will depend on the character of the adherents. Do we have a character which says, I will love all mankind, even if they kill you? Like he said during the mutiny, that saint refused to curse his sinners, curse his killers. He said it's a messenger from the beloved. When the snake also bit him, he had reached such an exalted state. The same thing we see in the crucifixion of Jesus. He said, oh Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing. They think they are killing the body, but I am the spirit. I am the spirit and God is the spirit. The spirit has to be one with the spiritual reality. That kind of knowledge or that kind of character which refuses to be cowed down or to be suppressed. So that is why when the Maharaja of Khetri was once, Maharaja of Mysore asked, what is life? Swamiji gave a beautiful definition. Life is an unfoldment of a being. Unfoldment of the divine nature or character of a being, which is under circumstances which try to press it down. So everywhere we find, she gives a beautiful definition of renunciation. Renunciation is the core of all religions, but she says, Swamiji gave it a new explanation. He said it is conquest that is renunciation. Conquest of what? Conquest of our lower nature. So resistance was to his mind the duty of a citizen. A citizen has to first develop strength by resisting evils. And for a monk, it is non-resistance. Because for this, he says, he quoted the Bible where he said that Jesus also said, forgive that person who tried to kill him. He said, forgive, he said, when you also, this definition was unique to Swami Vivekananda, when you can bring legions of angels to an easy victory. You have the capacity to retaliate, you have the capacity to conquer. While victory was still doubtful, however, only a coward to his thinking would turn the other cheek. Means for a person who cannot resist, non resistance is not the path. He has to first pass through that phase. That is why he advocated, he told Arjuna to fight the battle. He said, when you are strong enough, when you are conquered, then you renounce, then there is value to that renunciation. There's no merit in renunciation of a beggar. If a beggar doesn't have money and he says, I have renounced the whole world, it doesn't make sense. If you have money and then you renounce, you have something to renounce. So he says, when you have that capacity to resist, when you are confident that you can bring legions of angels to easy victory, when you have that capacity, and then you say, no, I will forgive others, then it has some merit. So while victory is still doubtful, when you know that you are unable to be successful or conquer something which is which needs to be conquered, and then you say that I don't want to conquer, I just want to give up, that is actually that is nothing but cowardice, which is hiding itself in the form of non-resistance or ahimsa. And you will quote all these great prophets and say you have to turn the other cheek. So Swamiji says that many people think that when Jesus said, if somebody asks you for the coat, you give him your cloak, or asks for the cloak, you give him your coat also. Or somebody hits you on the right cheek, you give him the left cheek also. So that Swamiji, according to Nivedita, as she understood Swamiji, she says, yes, that is the highest attainment. But that is only when you realize your oneness with the spirit. Before that, it would be cowardice. You have to first conquer, and then when you can bring legions of angels to victory, at that time when you say, okay, I forgive you or I pardon you, then it has some value. I have the power to conquer you, but I pardon you. So that is why the same lesson he quoted. Once she remembers, he quoted a story, parable of his master, Sri Ramakrishna, who told that a boy worked for 20 years, who worked very hard to get some power to walk on water. And so said a saint, that you have given 20 years of your effort to doing that for which others give the ferryman a penny. In one penny, you can cross the boat. To achieve that, that means he was very much particular. And she says he was very much particular to point out the futility of unnecessary hardship in the name of tapasya, which you do for gaining certain temporary things. Now, in this case, the desire to have that power of walking over water, it's not a miracle, it is possible. There are so many strange powers in the universe which can be developed through concentration of mind. People can be light. There are so many things in yoga. If you see the third chapter of Patanjali's yoga will describe all these things, but he gives a warning not to follow that. So his master used to say, you see, running after this power to walk on water, Thakur used to say that 20 years of your life you have spent in achieving something which enables you to cross the river, walking on river instead of traveling in a boat. But you could have done by paying a penny to that ferryman and traveled and not wasted your time. The lad might have answered that no ferryman could give his passengers what he had acquired by 20 years of patient striving. But the fact remains that to these teachers, that means Nivedita says, to these teachers, supremely sane, who are the sanest like Buddha, Christ, and Sri Ramakrishna and all others, the world's art of navigation had its own full value and its proper place. I mean, the real idea of navigating through life is not just crossing a river to cross the other side. The art of navigation, as very nicely they say, we have to cross the ocean of samsara in the boat of jnana. or the boat of bhakti. So that is the example that is given. So she is alluding to this particular example that is given, that you have to cross the ocean or the river of samsara and go to the other shore, means you have to reach mukti. So tapasya has to be done, or renunciation has to be done for that purpose, not to cross a physical river, which you can do by paying a penny. So you have to understand the importance of sadhana, importance of renunciation, importance of self-effort, which has to be practiced in such a way that it gives rise to a higher achievement in life, which is mukti, which is freedom from the bondage of this world. So years afterwards, she says, in Paris, someone approached him with him means Swami Vivekananda, our master, with a question as to the general history of the development of Indian ideas on these subjects. I mean, somebody in France, a philosopher perhaps, asked him how these ideas developed, the ideas of renunciation, what the idea of reality, unreality, Maya, Brahman, how did they come? How somebody asked him what is the history of development of these ideas. Why did not Indians just be worldly like any other culture, just running after? Of course, there were spiritual people in other cultures as well. There was Christ, there were so many other people. But why this so much discussion on the unreal and the real? Why not just be happy, live just as animals live, eat, drink, and die one day? That's how the whole world is going. Or fight and enjoy some power and wealth, and one fine day die. Everybody seems to be doing that. Why Indians differed, and how these ideas of renunciation were developed? That was the question asked to Swamiji by somebody in Paris. Paris was one of the representative nation. France was one of the representative nations of the achievements of the material world in the West in those days. Paris, London, these were the places where especially the whole of Europe was sitting on a wave of achievement, wave of glory, which they had achieved through scientific inventions and manipulating natural forces for the material benefit. So somebody asked, why did India focus so much on these subjects like renunciation, like spirituality and all those things? Did Buddha, then the next question which was asked by that French gentleman was, did Buddha teach that the many was real? Many was real and the ego unreal? While Orthodox Hinduism regards one as the real and the many as unreal. Because you see, in Buddhism, there is a strange idea. He gives so much emphasis to the changing nature of the world. He doesn't want to discuss, Buddha never discusses the idea of Maya as Vedanta discusses. He says there is suffering, and the diversity that you see, the desires, the objects, everything is unreal, everything is real. The world is a fleeting phenomena, but your ego, it is your ego which holds on to some of these objects, which are nothing but a passing phenomena. So the idea was that in Paris, somebody asked Swamiji that did Buddha teach that the many was real, that is Prakriti was real, but your ego, which he sought to destroy, was it unreal? Whereas Orthodox Hinduism regarded the one as real and the many as unreal. He was asked. Yes, said the Swami. And what Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and I have added to this is that the many and one are the same reality perceived by the same mind at different times and in different attitude. So this is the idea she got, a wonderful synthesis of different ways of explaining the same truth. Buddhism expressed the same idea of Maya according to Nivedita. That is what she understood. These wonderful lectures of Jnana Yoga, which he delivered in London and other places, which are now compiled together to form these famous lectures on Jnana Yoga. Some of them were delivered in New York as well. But you will find all the major lectures, the main lectures on Maya and illusion, real and apparent man, God in everything. These according to Nivedita, form the core of Hinduism. One is that the world is temporary, which is known as Anitya, and the Nitya, which is pervading all of them. So these two are the core principles. That is what we discussed today. And she said, based on this, the whole of Hinduism has developed. That no matter how real the things around you may appear, but the fact that they are temporary in nature, transient in nature, it creates an illusion, or maybe it creates a certain degree of uncertainty. Uncertainty is what he defined Maya as. Anything that is uncertain is Maya. Is it truth? Is it untruth? No, you can't say Maya doesn't exist, because it very much exists. It is a statement of fact that we see around us. We see how people become mad after money, mad after so many things which they think are real, which they think will give them security. But the moment they try to hoard that and think that it gives security, it somehow slips away from your vision, or slips away from your grip. So you try to control nature, and nature ultimately ends up controlling you. So Swamiji explains in very, very, you may say, very harsh language that in one of his talks on Maya, he says, you try to gather in Karma Yoga, of course. Again, in Karma Yoga also, he refers to the same thing. This gathering things, pravrutti, while explaining pravrutti and nivrutti marga. Pravrutti means gathering everything towards one center, which is the individual soul. So the ideas of pravrutti which developed in India, the pravrutti marga, where you heap everything around you, your material, your relatives, your money, your name, fame, everything is centered around the ego. So the question this French gentleman asked, she must have been present there, or she might have heard Swamiji quoting that, whether this ego is unreal. So Buddha said, Buddha gave his explanation. This trying to heap everything around that one center, which is I, or the ego, and then nature, Swamiji says, that is the nature of Maya, that she allows you to gather all these things. But he says nature has her own laws of justice. Nature will catch you, grab you by the throat. That is the language he uses. And all the things which you have grasped in your palms, it will force you, it will grab you by the throat and make you release all these things. So that's what happens. Whatever, no matter how much you of the worldly things you gather around yourself and think that you are secure, the security goes the moment you approach death. So whether it is real for the time being, everything is real. Money is as real. Sri Ramakrishna says, you weep thousands, people weep for money, people weep for family, for relatives, near and dear ones. But how many people weep for God or truth? So there is that real for whom nobody weeps, and the unreal for whom everybody weeps or runs after. So that discrepancy that you see in nature, a mixture of Anitya and Nitya, is defined by Swamiji as Maya. So the idea here is, she says, in Buddhism, when Swami Vivekananda was asked this question, that why do you emphasize so much this idea of renunciation? Is there nothing else in religion other than renunciation? When he pointed out that the underlying idea behind all religions, true spiritual, true spirituality, which is the core of every religion, the underlying idea is renunciation. But she says his idea of renunciation was quite different. He equated renunciation to a conquest which enables you not to succumb to the pressures of the things which you need to control, rather than the things controlling you. So when you control certain lower things by something higher, that conquest itself becomes renunciation. So that is the idea behind the wonderful Vedantic ideas she understood, which she heard from her master. And she says he drew up from, and he used to quote from the classical literature, not just of Hinduism, and he stood in our midst before uh, before all who were listening to him as an apostle of inner life. And she uses a beautiful sentence here. I'll close with this. The prophet, he was the prophet of subordination of the objective to the subjective. The world is behaving in a different way, and Swamiji was a master of the subjective. It is I who should decide, have control over things around me, and not the things around me should motivate or should inspire or should create desires in me to be a slave to them. So one day he suddenly, in a very inspired mood, he said, remember, he said to one of his disciples, remember, the message of India, the message of Indian spirituality is always not the soul for the nature, but the nature for the soul. So you are not somebody who will always remain a eternal soul. Soul is eternal entity, a small entity, puny little creature, like all animals around you. They are always controlled by nature. Nature will decide when they will live, when they will die. Many things, physically, mentally, they have apparently they are one with nature. All the natural forces decide their destiny. Whereas, according to the eternal message of India, that is Vedanta, soul is not for nature. It is nature which is there. You use nature in such a way, develop a mastery, and develop your soul. So it is nature is there, Prakriti is there for you to transcend it. So remember, he said, the message of India is always not the soul for nature, but the nature for the soul. So this was the main note of his message, the fundamental vibration that began, which he gave to the West. And behind everything that he discussed, every Vedantic idea that he discussed, all these things were based on this fundamental idea of not the soul for nature, but nature for the soul. So we will continue the discussion in some future class. So if there are some questions you can ask, otherwise I will take your leave. So we will be meeting again on Saturday. That is, I think last time we had a Gita class, or maybe no, next time will be the Gita class. Last time, so I'll be informing you. It will be at 5:45. That is when the university conducts. Because last time I think we had the class on Vedanta as the science of human possibilities. So this Saturday, most probably, it will be Gita, but I'll notify it. So I'll take your leave. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.